Well, our next guest is Mark Gatiss, who you'll all know from things like Sherlock, Dracula, Doctor Who, and The League of Gentlemen. He's here to tell us all about The Amazing Mr. Blunden, a feature-length film he's made for Sky Originals. It tells the story of Lucy and Jamie, who are a brother and sister who end up looking after a ruined country house with their mother after a mysterious old man called Mr. Blunden, played by Simon Callow, offers her the opportunity to become its caretaker. The house is said to be haunted, but the ghosts aren't actually ghosts. They've travelled forward in time to seek help, believing they are going to be murdered by the wicked Mr. and Mrs. Wickens, aka Tamsin Gregg and Mark Gatiss, showing off some astonishing fake teeth. Here's a clip.
Waste of a nice room, if you ask me. What use has books ever been to a body, eh?
Exactly.
Never done me any good.
Mind you can't read.
Exactly. Good for nothing but kindling. Hey, husband.
Pretty.
But just a nice little conflagration, eh? Enough to make it look accidental, like. I can leave that with you, can't I?
Oh, yeah. All that horrible learning, what they tried to force on me at school. But when?
Later, husband. The house is quiet.
Now we have Mark Gatiss with us. And when I say with us, Mark, where exactly are you at the moment? Because I'm a bit concerned.
Well, I'm at home, you see, but the problem is I was asked to move from the nice position because the light was streaming through behind me, making me look like a sinister figure in the background. Basically, we had the damp coursing done before lockdown, and of course we can't get anyone to finish the building work, so we've hastily painted over the exposed thing. It looks like in a cell, doesn't it? The rest of the house is lovely.
I was a bit
It's
worried.
really horrible. But look, that's the Christmas tree. It's all fine.
Oh, that's nice.
There we go.
That's
But
nice.
I know, I saw, as I turned it around, I thought that looks so grim. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just, we're just, basically, because no one's been around for 2 years, it doesn't really matter. So we're just stuck with it now.
In the history of all the interviews you've done, Mark, over the years, have you previously managed to get the words damp coursing into the first minute or so?
No.
Good.
But you see, no one's
Exclusive.
ever asked.
Yeah.
No one's asked before. It's quite nice to have a novel thing to talk about.
Exactly, it is.
People usually ask the same old
Oh,
thing.
I know, right?
So I thought I'd get damp coursing in to kick it off in a different direction.
How long has there been damp issues in your house? By
It's-
the way, I'm going to go with this for a little while,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're okay. How long has there been damp? Yeah.
It was built in 1790,
What?
so maybe a long time. I don't know.
This is interesting because so much of you growing up was about things that are old, right?
Yes.
You've always loved things that are old. You love talking to old people about history and their lives, etc., etc. So was it always your plan to get a very old house at some point? How much
Specifically a
excitement was it?
damp one.
Yes, specifically a damp
Not
one.
the
yeah.
damp bit. That was
No.
an accident.
No.
Yes, very. I couldn't live in a new house. I don't think I could. I really don't. I love the history of all houses, and you know, the more sort of nooks and crannies they have, the better. And I've always loved that. When we moved into this place, my mum and dad bought me a visitor's book, and which we occasionally remember to get people to sign. Not that anyone comes around anymore, as you know, because you're not allowed. But I remember I thought, wouldn't it be great if you came down one morning and it was full, and it'd been signed by all the people who used to live there. That's quite a good idea, isn't it?
So tell us about the history of this house then. From 1790, you would presumably you've done rather a lot of research as to who built it.
It's part of it. It used to be called Church Passage where I live. It's not called that anymore. And it was something to do with the church. I live near a church. I live next to a churchyard. You'd be pleased to know.
Well, you grew up opposite a psychiatric hospital, so
That's
I mean,
right.
you choose interesting places to live. Although you didn't choose the first place, that was chosen for you. To be fair, so I don't want you to give too much away because we don't want people to know where you live. But in terms of other historical facts about the house that you can give out without people camping outside your door tomorrow, we don't want that to happen.
Oh, I can tell you is when we bought it off an old lady who bought it in 1970, I think, for about £10, and she said, I was asking her about it. And she said, "Oh, there is a secret passage." And I went, "What?" There is a cellar which has a passage in it, and she had it bricked up for the damp a long time ago. And our original intention was to excavate the cellar to find out where the passage led, but we've never done it.
What?
Maybe because I think I was afraid I might unleash a demon or something.
But you of all people would love to unleash a demon. There's a whole series in that.
Not
surely.
real ones. This is a premise for a TV show.
Come on,
Oh,
Mark.
really? No, but Yvette Fielding was busy, so I'm not saying
What a show.
We're getting
that
off
would
the
be.
point here somewhat.
Yes, no, true. Sorry, let's bring it back to damp coursing. Sorry, my apologies. I went off on a tangent that wasn't damp related. Okay, so then how more difficult is it for you to write dialogue which is firmly rooted in the now than it is? Because it feels that you're so naturally gifted at writing dialogue from a different era. The way that people talk to each other, the cadences of their speech, the words that they use, the sentence structure.
It's a lot of fun, obviously, and I think I've always liked writing historical stuff. Most of my Doctor Who's were historical because you can kind of get into that feel, the flavour of it, and especially with Dickens, it's deep in my head. All those kind of the way that hackney carriage drivers used to speak, the way they always say, "Whoa, we good, all those things Sam Weller used to say and Sarah Gamp and things like that. It comes very naturally to me. But with Mr. Blunden, because the kids are from the present day, and I was very keen to make it feel rooted in our world, So I hope I can do both. But I did say to the kids, if anything sounds wrong in your mouth, don't hesitate to change it, please. I don't want to sound like a 55-year-old man trying to write hipster speak. But it was fun. But I did listen to the kids a lot and the way they spoke, and also the sort of stuff they say. They do have their own catchphrases, but you've got to be careful. You don't then make it dates within 12 minutes because kids don't speak like that anymore, So there's no slang in that sense, But it's always fun to do that research and kind of immerse yourself in the way people used to speak.
Hayley.
Ghosts are a big thing at Christmas, and my favourite Christmas shows usually involve ghosts in this way, in some way. And this year you've done 2 ghost things. We've got Mr. Blunden, and also we've got the MR3.
Yes, I'm also doing Christmas Carol on stage at Ali Pali.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it's literally my ghostliest year ever, which is saying something.
It is. I watched your M.R. James ghost story last night, and as a big fan of the old BBC adaptations, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We were talking about this last week because I always associate ghosts with Christmas. And I mentioned this to Scott, and he said, I don't associate ghosts with Christmas at all. But
no, I'm very much the opposite.
I thought everybody did. Where do you think this association with ghosts and Christmas came from? Is it Dickens?
I don't know what's wrong with Scott.
There's a lot, don't worry. We're sorting it out.
Far too much fun, I think, at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Yes, well, the thing it does, what Dickens does, I think, is he crystallizes an existing tradition. It's a very English tradition, the ghost story, especially at this time of the year. Partly because it's actually, of course, a pagan festival which had Christianity overlaid on top of it. So there's a lot of stuff in a very Nigel Neal way. There's a lot of stuff lurking under the surface. But it's also because it's the hinge point of the year. You look back and you look forward. There's a fabulous bit in Pickwick Papers where Dickens talks about the reason that Christmas resonates so much is because we see people again who aren't there, that the hearts that once beat have stopped. He says something like that. It's a beautiful way of expressing it. And so it's happy and sad at the same time. And I think one of the reasons people sometimes push back against Christmas is because of this idea of enforced jollity, whereas in fact everyone's experience of it is always a mixture of the two. And it can be very stressful and pressured, and but equally you're thinking about when you were a kid yourself and about the people you've lost, and you're looking forward to a new year and a fresh start, hopefully, although we're never going to get that because we're trapped in a sort of mad a cursive occlusion of an inescapable pattern of lockdown and repeat, which is Christmas yet to come.
Indeed. Scott?
I mean, I'm always sort of fascinated by the fact that with Sherlock and Dracula and Doctor Who, and of course your 3 projects coming on now, they're always on at Christmas. They're always on at this time of year. And I'm thinking, on top of all the other responsibilities and everything else you have to put together, launching several TV shows or announcing or prepping or writing or showcasing some merely just adds to the amount of work that you have to do on top of a very busy time of year. Is it just coincidental that you always have these shows on at time of year? Is it something that you particularly aim for?
Well, the first season of Sherlock was on in the summer, if you remember. It was in a, it was in a graveyard slot. It was just slung out. And then it became a massive hit, and therefore it had to be on New Year's Day, wasn't it? Christmas, New Year's Day. Dracula sort of took the Sherlock slot. I don't know. It is. I mean, basically, I made the Mezzotint in February, but it's a ghost story for Christmas, and therefore it's just been on the shelf waiting. I'm not conscious of that pressure. I mean, it gives you enough time to make them, doesn't it? But yeah, I haven't really thought about it. But I love Christmas, and I love having things ready for this time of year. I mean, it's a marvelous feeling to think, right, there's something there ready to go. And I, as an avid viewer myself, I always want to make things that I'd like to watch myself. So if I hadn't done these things, I'd definitely be tuning into them because they're just obviously up my street.
So when you are trying to construct horror and to scare us, of course, one of the vital elements, Mark, is surprise and shock at what's just happened to you. So how do you construct that when, of course, the element of surprise for you is taken out of it because you're writing it? How do you know you've got it right?
Well, as you said, a lot is constructed in the edit, of course, because you can't. It's difficult to capture. It's like a joke, really. I'm always made this comparison. It's like the punchline of a joke. You have to do a scare is like that. You have to have enough tension and enough kind of shaggy dog element for the rug pull to work. So you have to. M.R. James is very hot on the sort of slow build up of dread. And often you start with laughs. You start in a funnier situation with people you can get to know, and then you gradually sort of turn the dial on the suspense as their world starts to crumble. I've done a lot with that with the way we shot Rory Kinnear in the Mezzotint, that the lenses get sort of wider and wider as we sort of go into his head. And we actually pushed him to the edge of the frame, so he looks like he's kind of out on a limb. The more paranoid he gets, So you do it like that. It sort of builds up into a picture of sort of disintegration and unease, I think, is the chief thing to me. And then obviously you've just got to come in with with the shocks as well. And I think that it always works, as long as you don't rely on just shock after shock after shock. But I think if you build like that, you've got to have an actual release of tension, or you feel like you haven't got the joke, as it were.
Do you see it before you write it, or do you write it and then you see it?
Well, I tell you what's very, very odd, and it always happens. This is that you live with it for a long time, and you have a mental picture of it, and then the moment you start to shoot it, if you're lucky enough to get it made, that new version overlays the old one, and it sort of vanishes. Right. I always happens to me. I can see it now, the way you picture it, and obviously if I'm directing it as well, you're trying to match the picture in reality to the one in your head. But sometimes it's wildly different just because circumstances change, or you come up with something totally different, I guess, But it's a very interesting process, that. And obviously, if you're writing something and then you hand it over to someone else to make, then it's a different thing again, because you're then bringing in another collaborator who has maybe a different idea of how it will look and all sorts of things.
Hayley,
and what is your
what
is your sort of writing style like? Is it kind of to a deadline? Is it kind of quite well paced? Are you literally cramming right up to the last second, starts the hour before? I'm kind of getting the impression that every writer does it a little bit differently.
Oh yeah, everyone does differently. I've got it's taken me years to get to a really good working method. I always write best in the mornings. I can't write at night. Russell T Davies writes through the night. I just fall asleep. I can't make that work. But I tell you what's been a huge lesson. It's a Philip Pullman lesson, which is writing 1,000 words a day. I don't do that every day. I haven't written anything for ages because I've been busy doing post-production and doing the play and everything. But if you're actually writing something, if you write 1,000 words a day, you get there by 10 a.m., then you can have the rest of the day off. But if you spend the whole day just tapping away, you're not quite sure. It's a really clever idea as a self-imposed deadline like that. And sometimes you have a good day, you do 2,000 words, then you feel like you've got ahead. But it's not a bad idea at all, and it doesn't mean you'll use any of it. Maybe you'll use one sentence or something like that, but it's a really good way of just sort of getting through it, because the great enemy is the blank page. As long as you've got something to work with. I was reading a really interesting interview with one of the Simpsons writers, or one of the original Simpsons writers, and he used to write complete placeholder scripts. It would say, Homer, funny line here. And
wow.
He'd have a script,
right?
And even its most rudimentary form, it's not empty, and that's not a bad idea at all. The way of approaching it.
For those who are at all interested, Russell T Davies' quote is, "I leave it till the last minute, and then I leave it some more. Eventually, I leave it till I'm desperate. I always think I'm not ready to write it. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just a jumble of thoughts in a state of flux. There's no story. I don't know how A connects to B. I don't know anything. I get myself into a genuine state of panic. Normally, I'll leave it till the deadline. I haven't even started writing. This has become over the years a week beyond the deadline, or even more. It can be a week or weeks past the delivery day, and I haven't started writing. In fact, I don't have delivery dates anymore. I go to the start of pre-production day. I consider that to be my real deadline, and then I miss that. It's a cycle that I cannot break. I simply can't help it. It makes my life miserable." That's Russell T Davies.
Yes, it's a hateful job. No one should do it.
I think Stephen Sondheim said if he owes you a song on Monday, he'll get to work on it on Sunday.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
And where are you then, Mark? Are you incredibly well organised?
No. It's all everyone's. I mean, I tell you what, I've found. I think the truth is, Brian Clemens was one of my great heroes who created The Professionals and Thriller, and he used to write a lot of the Avengers. He was a great ideas man, and he said in the end, it's just ask to chair, pen to paper. And you can come up with so many excuses, reasons not to. But in the end, you've just got to get on with it. And so, but then I think you can also tell if there's it's a little fire inside you of enthusiasm, which is different. That's the thing that keeps you going. And sometimes if it's not there, you think, I don't think this project is working, or it's not right for me, because you don't feel that. It's the thing that gets you started, you know.
Hayley.
Well, mine is another writing-based question, but so The Amazing Mr. Blunden is based on the novel The Ghosts by Antonia Barber, but it was also a film in 1974. When you're adapting something like this, do you stick more closely to the existing movie, or did you go back to the book?
Well, the film, 1972, in fact, is one of my absolute favorite films. I saw it when I was a kid at school, the day we broke up for the Christmas holidays on an old projector, and it absolutely profoundly affected me. In fact, I'm going to write something one day about the influence that the first sort of half a dozen movies I ever saw has had on the rest of my life. I think these things just really stay with you. I loved it. It's charming. It's funny, it's scary, it's sort of sad and happy, like Christmas. And so I've always loved it, and it's a real comfort film for me. So when the chance came to do a new version, I was a little trepidatious, but I read the book again, which I hadn't read since I was a teenager. And the book is set in the present day, whereas Lionel Jeffrey's original film, because it was a sort of follow-up to The Railway Children, is very much in that Jenny Agutter sort of E. Nesbitt kind of world. In fact, it's set in 1918. And I thought, if I set it now and make the kids travel back 200 years from a very recognizable modern London. That in itself is a reason to do it again, you know. So I went back to the book, and there are a few things in the book, from the book, which aren't in the Lionel Jeffries film. But this is a good writing note. There were lots of the stuff. I kept taking stuff out, and it was all the stuff that Lionel Jeffries had taken out as well. And I'm sure he had been in the same place. He thought, oh, that's quite. I think, why can't we do? Oh no, we can't do that. No, that doesn't fit. And the more I shaped it, the more it resembled the story beats that Lionel Jeffries had done. You know, so and that's a very good sign, I think, is because, you know, someone clever has been there before and made those decisions in the same way.
Talking about films and formative films more specifically, why should everybody love, above all others, On Her Majesty's Secret Service as a Bond film of choice? Because that's your favourite Bond film, isn't it? Of all the Bond films that you could have chosen from, On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Well, it's not
George Lazenby.
It's not the best one. It's my favourite. That's very different.
Right.
It's very close to being the best one. The best one is From Russia with Love, definitely. I love it for all its not quitenesses, if you know what I mean. People always, you know, if only Connery had hung on and done that one, but Connery was visibly bored in You Only Live Twice. He would have been even more visibly bored in this, and it's so odd. It's just this one-off guy who is amazingly handsome, but no Connery. But it's brilliantly made. It's the closest to the novel. Diana Rigg's fantastic. Telly Savalas is off the chart fantastic. It's so sexy. It's terribly sad. It's got the best score, the best skiing, the first skiing. It's Christmas. It's a Christmas movie. I just adore it. I adore it. And it's because it's such a curate's egg. It's a combination of all the things which shouldn't work, and somehow or other, it's become a huge favorite. I mean, if you've seen Die Another Day, No Time to Die, which is a love letter to what was at one point the Bond film that no one ever talked about. It's become something over the last 50 years, very much more than people ever expected it to be. It's a charming and unusual film. Can
you watch film and television without deconstructing it as you're watching it? When I was at Radio 1, it was quite difficult for me to listen to music for pleasure, because music always tended to be, right, okay, is this chorus strong enough? What's it going into, etc., etc. It was a kind of deconstructing of it. Do you find it quite easy to keep your producing, writing, acting kind of heads away from it and just enjoy? I think
you probably find the same thing. It depends on the strength of the product,
yes,
in a way. There was a particular episode of Succession, I think it's in the first season, when Kendall is trying to depose Brian Cox, and he can't get to the office because they locked down the city, and he gets stuck in traffic, and that destroys his plan. And it was so tense. I looked down and I realized this had never happened to me in my life before. I was actually sitting on the edge of my seat. Wow. I was leaning towards the TV. Wow. I was so gripped by it. So there you are. It absolutely happens. Other times, of course, you just, the thing I'm always spotting is ADR, which is additional dialogue recording.
Yes, yes. There's loads of Stephen Graham of that on something I was watching the other day.
So what's ADR? Sorry, it's gone completely over my head.
It's dubbing, isn't it?
It's dubbing. Additional dialogue recording. So it's stuff you do to patch things up, or sometimes because we had to do a little bit in Mr. Blunden just because of sound issues, because it was a windy day. So you have to go back in the studio, recording studio, but I can always spot it in a way I couldn't when I was a kid. You never think about it, or weirdly, you never think about things which I remember Edgar Wright pointing out to me in excruciating detail, the amount of times that it's not on George Lazenby when he does his funny lines. It's on, he picks up some beluga caviar, there's a big close-up of his hands. You think, no, that wouldn't be Sean Connery. That would be Sean Connery if it was but mostly, no, I think it just depends on what you're watching and how much it grips you really, or entertains you. I tell you what, I never spot until I watch those shows about them is bloopers. You know, it's amazing what you don't see. Someone points and just says, look, you know, here's a close-up of TV and it's got all these ornaments on the top, and then you see the reverse shot and then they're just not there. Wow. And then you point it out and you just go, this is no joke. Once we were about to sign off an episode of Sherlock, and there was this big close-up on Martin Freeman, quite serious, dramatic moment. And we were it was like the last time we were going to watch it. And I just went, what's that? And it was the B camera, absolutely massively in the back of the shot, like here. And none of us had seen it.
On his shoulder, like over his shoulder, there was
it practically was. We watched it so many times we'd become snowblind, and it was literally. I went out for a cup of tea or something, came back and just. Because it was like a magic eye picture. Because I looked away, I could suddenly see it. It was incredible. And it would have gone out. Absolutely would have gone out.
I think my favourite one of that ever was that famous publicity shot of Downton Abbey where you can see a plastic water bottle just in the background. So it's the entire cast. In this
Who are they playing?
What, Downton Abbey?
The plastic water bottle, who are they playing?
Oh, now I get it. But you know, it was the best about it was that the plastic water bottle was firmly in the shot. It wasn't to the side, out of that. It was literally centre stage, as if it was about the bottle.
Anyone, this always bothers me. Anyone who knows anything about the fog of war, the terrifying circumstances in which television and film was made, you must always forgive, because it's so easily done. It's so easily, you know. We had 6 weeks to shoot Mr. Blunden. There's a massive fire. Spoilers at the end of the film. It's mostly done with real fire, and it was really scary. And obviously, we had massive safety precautions. But in the midst of all that, when you're literally we set the set on fire. You also have to take plate shots where it's not on fire, plate shots when it's been burned, plate shots while it's being burned, plate shots with actors in, without actors in. Between all those things, it's a miracle that more doesn't go wrong. And you know, things like that. So when I see like a Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones or something, I don't start writing pompous letters to people. It's like, give them a break, for God's sake. It's really difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah, interesting. Mark, listen, have a wonderful Christmas and New Year.
Thank you very much. You too.
And here's a sentence I didn't think I'd hear myself saying. Get your passage open. Get your secret passage undone for the new year. Giles Brandreth was on earlier and he was saying, do something that takes you out your comfort zone for next year. You should uncover this secret passage in your house.
I've got to get the damp course.
Yeah, get the damp course. I'm glad we've come back to the damp coursing at the end of my conversation. Yeah, get the damp coursing done first. But then after that, unleash the potential demon that lives in your house.
Yes, thank you very much. I will. I definitely will.
For the new year. Take care, Mark.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.